Colby, man, thanks for inviting us out here to Florida. Why don't you tell us where we are at and where you wanted to do this interview?
Yeah, probably most fighters that you talk to can't even find an Uber ride to get here, but I'm showing up in a helicopter, so I think that shows who runs business around here and who's the biggest and best business in the UFC welterweight division right now. So we're over at Trump International. God bless President Trump for allowing me to come here and shoot this ESPN one-on-one interview with you.
At Trump International, it's an honor to have him, but that's going to be a great fight, and I'll be there. I'll be there with Dana White, and we will make our walk. But I think you're going to do great, champ. And he's a much better fighter than a golfer.
How crazy is life for you now? And when you think about where you came from and the kind of things that you're doing now, like what comes to mind?
Just hard to imagine, hard to believe this is my reality. Like, I wake up in the morning, you know, I take a helicopter from Miami to come up to West Palm. You know, first person I'm greeted by is the president, you know, one of the most famous people alive ever. And, you know, he's done such great things for this country. Just from where I came from, a small little teeny town in Springfield, Oregon, Thurston, Oregon, to be here, you know, on the biggest and brightest stage and hanging out with, you know, the most prominent person in America. It doesn't feel real. It's hard to imagine sometimes, but I'm blessed and I'm here for a reason. I know this is God's plan. Can
you tell me a little bit about Springfield, Oregon? Like, describe it for me a little bit.
Describe it, yeah, probably like 100,000 people in it, very small. My graduating class, like 200 people my senior year. Just a small suburb town, you know, right outside the mountains of Oregon, and just not a lot of people make it out of there. Most people either stay in town, work at the mill, working basic income, you know, over in the small town of Springfield, Thurston, Oregon. And so to make it to this level, be fighting on the grandest stage is this, it's beyond me.
When you were a kid, what did you want in life?
When I was a kid, I always told my parents and coaches I wanted to be the best wrestler in the world. But when I got to middle school and high school, I started thinking like, hey man, the best wrestler in the world, that's not gonna financially set me and my family up for life.
Where do you think that desire to be the best in the world at wrestling started? Like, was that just instant, or how did that come about?
Yeah, it was instant. You know, I think as a little kid, I was a smaller little kid, you know, like freshman year of high school, I was 100 pounds. So I got picked on a lot. I got bullied. And, you know, I always got picked on, you know, through middle school and elementary school. Kids made fun of my teeth. Oh, you got a field goal post in the middle of your teeth, because I had some buck teeth. And so I was just like, I would get this anger inside. I'm like, man, but I would channel that energy. I would go to the wrestling room and I would drill my takedowns. I'd be like, yeah, you want to talk about my teeth? And I would just drill double leg takedowns over and over, hundreds, thousands, repetition. And I would do things that most kids didn't want to do. You know, they didn't want to get sweaty. They didn't want to get bloody, but I knew my dreams were more important than how I felt. So I was able to push myself to get the most out of myself.
And so you were doing that from an early age, like sort of like with anger as a motivation, huh?
Yeah, that's exactly right, Brett. You know, anger and frustration, that was what fueled me in the wrestling room. That's what pushed me to do the extra reps, to stay, you know, extra hours after practice when everybody's gone, to put in the extra work to do things that most of these kids weren't going to be able to do. So, you know, I definitely was fueled a lot by anger.
So you have your wrestling career in high school. How did that go?
My wrestling career in high school went pretty well. You know, I didn't have success until my senior year of high school. You know, I hit a growth spurt, I think, junior to senior year, where I started to feel like a man and get that man strength. But, you know, I had a lot of resilience. You know, early on, I didn't have success. I wasn't like a state champion. And you see a lot of these kids that get a lot of accolades as a young age, and then they fizzle out because they lose the motivation. I think me not finding success till later in high school and later in college was what really set me up to be where I'm at today, because, you know, I had to face those trials and tribulations. I had to face the setbacks and the failure, but the failure never deterred me. It just made me stronger. It made me want it even more. So I got back to the wrestling room, and I got back to that blue collar work ethic mentality. And, you know, I went to the grindstone and just committed myself to being the best I could be.
So when you graduated, did you have offers, or how did you decide which school you were going to go to?
Yeah, so when I graduated, I had a bunch of offers. Iowa State, Penn State, Oregon State is where I ended up. But, I ended up going the junior college route because I wanted, a little bit of time for growth. I didn't want to rush into the Division I, landscape, because that's the best of the best. Those guys are just killers. So I wanted to be able to, kind of grow my way up. And they had a great prestigious program at Iowa Central Community College. It's done a lot for us. They've had guys like John Bones Jones, Cain Velasquez, Joe Soto, another roommate of mine. So I wanted to go there, have a developmental couple years, and it was the best thing that could happen, because then I transferred to Oregon State with 3 years, and I was able to achieve All-American honors as a Division I athlete.
I don't think I've ever heard you really talk about some of the things that happened in college, the worst setbacks. Because prior to going to Oregon State, you went to Iowa, right?
Yep.
Can you talk about what happened at Iowa?
Yeah, so, when I went to Iowa, it was definitely an adjustment period, because I went from Oregon to the Midwest, which just a completely different lifestyle in the cornfields. And, I didn't have a lot of friends around. I grew up in Oregon. My family was all in Oregon. So it was an adjustment getting comfortable in Iowa by myself, becoming a man where, hey, man, everything's in your own hands. Your destiny's in your own hands. Whatever you want to create, it's going to be up to you now. It's not your mom or dad making you breakfast in the morning, do your laundry. You got to do it on yourself. So, when I transferred to University of Iowa, I was a lost kid, to be honest. I was starting to get a little bit of clout. Like, I was the top recruit going to Iowa, and I was this guy that was supposed to fill in for this national champion shoes, and I was going to be the second coming. And a guy named Dan Gable had brought me in, and he recruited me to wrestle under Tom Brands. And I just remember those guys believing in me, but I was so immature at the time. Like, I didn't make good decisions, but just like you said, no one's perfect. We all make mistakes. So I had to have some failures and some setbacks during that time to go on this course to where I am today. And I believe God did that for a reason. I think God did some things to me. I got in a little trouble. I had a drunken driving incident, a DUI, and that's why I had to leave Iowa. When I got that DUI, that was the wake-up call I needed in my life. Like, I've never gotten in trouble. I've never done things in my life, but here I am as a kid going to Iowa, and now the whole world wants me. I'm this star wrestler. When you're a wrestler at Iowa, you're bigger than any sport, bigger than the football, bigger than the basketball. You are the star, because Dan Gable created a legacy at Iowa Wrestling that everybody knows Iowa Wrestling is the best team in the country. So the interaction and the reception that people had for me, they gave me too much. The bars were like, hey, come, you can have whatever you want, free drinks, bring any girls, you get whatever you want, anything. So I was like, whoa, I never had like celebrity status before. So I started to feel invincible, and I made some bad decisions, but if I wouldn't have made those decisions, I wouldn't be on this path that I'm on today. So I'm thankful that I did that, and it corrected my life, and here I am.
And last question on that, like you say, so much media attention is given to those kids when they're wrestling, when you're doing things well. And then I'm sure that when the DUI happened, I'm sure that there was a lot of media attention around that. Like, what was the fallout sort of for you, just internally dealing with like all this negative attention that was placed on you?
Yeah, it was tough to process, because I was so young and not mature at that time. A 19-year-old kid, not even grown up, just a little kid, just not making good decisions. And it was tough. It was very hard, because here I was all my whole life. All I wanted to do was wrestle for Iowa Wrestling under Dan Gable and Tom Brands. And then now I'm like a failure to those guys. They lost hope in me. They gave up on me, essentially. They didn't think that I could deserve a second chance. They said, hey, nope, that was the one chance you got. That's it. So, I think that was a little harsh. I think they should have not given up on me so easily. I think they should have realized I'm a 19-year-old kid. We make mistakes. Tell me one person in this room today that hasn't made a mistake or is perfect. The only perfect person in this world is God. So for someone to just lose hope after one hopeless night, like, I thought it was a little cruel. I thought it was unfair, but life's not fair, and that's what needed to happen for me to be on the journey I'm on today. And it ended up being a blessing in disguise, because I went back home to Oregon State University. I got back to my roots. I got back to my family. I wasn't around the best coaches, the best team, but I had my family and my friends around me, and that was more important than having some famed coaches and famed wrestling room around me. So, I'm happy it happened. I'm happy the journey turned out the way it did, because I know I wouldn't be here today fighting for a UFC world title again if it didn't happen.
Why do you say that? Just because of how good it was to just get back to your own sort of environment in Oregon?
Yeah, I think so. Getting back to my own environment, being comfortable around my people, but also having to face massive failure. Like, that was worse than losing a wrestling match. That was like, I thought I lost my life. I thought it was over. I was like, dude, no one's going to ever let me wrestle. I'm not going to ever be able to go do anything. I'm not going to get an opportunity ever again because of a disappointing night where I made a mistake. So, I'm very thankful it happened because it lit a fuel in my soul that really helped me to dig deep and find out who I truly was and what I truly wanted. And, after that day, I vowed I wasn't going to drink again. I was just going to commit myself to being the best wrestler. And then obviously after I was done with wrestling, being the best fighter I could ever be. So I wouldn't be here today without that situation happening. I know it.
And that's right, actually. I think you and I have talked before. You don't drink at all, right?
Don't drink at all. Maybe a glass of red wine just because it's good for the heart, and my coaches have always vouched for it, saying, hey, it's good for you, to have a glass of wine here and there, but nothing more than that. I don't drink. I gave up the party lifestyle in college because I wanted to commit myself, and I wanted to be a 365, 24/7 fighter. I didn't want to be a part-time fighter. I wanted to be a full-time fighter and commit my life to being the best I could be in this career.
Over the course of your wrestling career, but then also, the UFC one is pretty well documented, but in your own words, what would you say is do people want you to win? And going back to the college wrestling days, were you a guy that people cheered for, or were you a guy that people wanted to see lose?
Definitely people wanted to see me lose because, I had that brash style. I wasn't afraid to push someone's head in the mat and be mean. I wrestled mean. I was very physical. I got in people's face and I let it know it was going to be a dogfight. If you beat me, you were going to walk off the mat hanging your head. You weren't going to keep your head held high looking me in the eyes because you knew I took your soul mentally. You might have beat me physically by points, but deep down in your soul, you know that if this thing kept going and there wasn't a time limit, I'd be able to do whatever I want to you. So everybody wanted to see me lose. Everybody's hated me. I've always been the villain, the bad guy. So it's okay. I like playing that role. It's a lot funner that way.
Is it a lot funner? Because now you kind of you've had this chaos thing going for so long, but now I think you're kind of calling yourself the people's champ as well. And it does seem like people have come around on you. They like your hard-nosed style. They like the cardio. They like the way that you've carried yourself a bit. In a perfect world, would you be the people's champ and walk out to cheers, or do you like the chaos and the boos?
I love the boos. I love people telling me that I can't do something or doubting me. I think the doubters have always been my fuel for motivation, proving them wrong. So everybody likes to put someone in a box and say what they're capable of when they have no idea their work ethic. They have no idea the sacrifices they're making every day to achieve their dreams and goals. So people can say whatever they want. Everybody has an opinion in this world, and most of the time they're like, and they stink.
Why do you think that they're like that? Why don't people want you here in this spot?
They're jealous and they're envious, and that's the simple truth. They wish they had the relationship they had with the president. They wish they could do the things I do. They wish they could fly in helicopters from Miami to West Palm Beach on a day's notice. So, they're jealous. That's all it is. I'm not really worried about anybody else's opinions, but it is nice for some fans to kind of come around me now and realize the entertainment that I'm bringing to them. And, they pay their hard-earned money to watch us. So, I want to give them a show every time I'm out there, not just inside the octagon, but outside too. I want everything to be just a show where they feel like it's a story and they want to buy into it because I love the UFC and I love doing good business for them.
We haven't seen you since March of last year. You beat Jorge Masvidal. And you've done a couple interviews here and there, but just what was, because that was a big opportunity, right? That was a grudge match. He's obviously a big name like yourself as a main event. So it's that's the kind of opportunity that can really sort of, benefit your career. What was, I guess, what'd you take out of that fight? Did you feel like you really gained something? You gained everything that you wanted out of that big kind of platform?
Yeah, definitely. It was an easy fight, 5 rounds of domination, 50-43 in a soda. Been big brother in that guy my whole life. He's never won a second of any round off me. So just another dominating performance, especially coming off a 3-month turnaround from beating Marty Usman in Madison Square Garden. I thought I came back and rallied and won the last 3 rounds. I dropped him in the 4th. So I feel like I beat him that night. And just because they didn't put the belt around me and 3 judges cage side didn't score the fight for me, they gave him, 3 rounds to 2 against me. That's okay. That those aren't the people that are going to determine my value, my worth on this planet. So if the fans are impressed by my work, that's all that matters to me. I feel like I am the champion. What fighter in history has the president coming out there to greet them What fighter in history has went to the White House and hung out with the sitting president in the Oval Office? What fighters headlining MSG, headlining T-Mobile Arena? No one can claim to what I've been able to do in my career. So at the end of the day, I am a champion, and I am the champion, and I'm coming December 6th to reclaim and solidify my legacy.
As I mentioned, we haven't seen you since March of last year. What have you been doing, and has it been tough not fighting for 18 months?
It's been extremely tough because as soon as I got done with that fight with George in March, I went backstage to Hunter Campbell backstage, and I said, Hunter, I want to fight again in June or July. Get me back in there. I need to fight. Like, I'm in my prime right now. I want to go capitalize. They were looking at setting up that fight with that motherfucker Khamzat Chimaev, but he's unprofessional. He's a clown. He's out there laughing when he's missing weight by 10 pounds, making a fool of this publicly traded, beautiful company of the UFC, making a fool laughing while you're ruining their main event pay-per-view. So he's not accountable. He's not someone they can trust in that spotlight. And they gave him the easiest fight in the division. A guy, the soy boy, the washed up Nate Diaz that shouldn't even be fighting anymore. The guy can't even talk straight. He's not even coherent anymore. They gave him the easiest fight to set up to get this big money fight with Colby Covington. He couldn't pass the test. He was afraid, plain and simple. So he ran away from me to middleweight, and it sucks because they were trying to set that fight up. So that's what's been the delay is other fighters not agreeing to the fights and not doing business for the UFC. You think I wanted to sit out 18 months? I'm in my prime. You think I wanted to sit through my prime years? I wanted to fight in June and July, right after my last fight with George. It's not my fault that I had to sit out that long. It's the other people's fault. You think Hunter Campbell, Dana White would put me in this position to be the UFC welterweight #1 contender if I was turning down fights and sitting out 18 months? No. I accepted every single fight they offered. Khamzat Chimaev, Dustin Poirier, whoever else they had. Didn't matter. I said yes, yes, yes. Never said no one time in my career. So I wouldn't be in this position if it wasn't for me always being a yes man and wanting to be the ultimate company man. I'm a tough son of a gun, and December 16th, I'm coming to get that belt. I don't care who's in my way. No one's beating me in front of Donald Trump.
Like the people who are closest to you, what would they say about your journey? Like if I asked some of your closest family or friends, what would they say about, like, tell me the story of Colby Covington's rise to a UFC championship?
They would probably say I'm the underdog kid. Not supposed to be here, not the most talented, definitely the hardest worker in the room, but didn't have a talent level, but was willing to do whatever it took, to get better and to improve and evolve my craft as a martial artist. So I think a lot of people would just say he's an underdog. He's not supposed to be here, but God has a bigger plan for him, and he's willing to do whatever it takes to rise up and become world champion.
You ever wish that you didn't have to be the hardest worker in the room?
Not at all. I feel like, my purpose here on this life is to really push myself and get the most out of myself mentally and physically. So, I don't know what a day would look like if I wasn't pushing myself to the absolute brink of exhaustion where, I almost have to be carried out of the gym. That's how my purpose in this life is. I feel better that way, and it feels like a sense of accomplishment. Like, this isn't being given to me. Nothing in the UFC is being given to me. It's only being earned. So to earn it the hard way, it's such a much more rewarding feeling versus being handed out like a lot of kids get these days. I
feel like basically every fight, pretty much since the Brazil situation, if someone were to ask me, Brett, who's the good guy, who's the bad guy in this fight, like if you have to pick one or the other, like I'd probably label you as the bad guy in every single one. This one I'm not so sure about, man, because you'll be coming off of a long layoff. When you walk in a Las Vegas arena with a U.S. flag around, I think you might be the good guy in this one. Do you feel that? And then how much are you looking forward to that?
At the end of the day, this is about pleasing the fans. If the fans don't rally around you and they don't give you the support, then the UFC is not going to care for you. You have to drum up that support one way or another, and he hasn't been able to do that. So I'm here to rectify this division. I'm here to bring 1776 back to T-Mobile Arena, and December 16th, it's going to be a show, Brett. I promise you that.
Awesome, man. I think that's it for you for here. Thank you so much, Colby.
Cool. Thanks, Brett. Appreciate it, buddy.